All right, good morning, everybody. It's 8:30. We'll call this morning's meeting to order. And our first item is the approval of the agenda. And before we get a motion to approve, I would like to add to the agenda a little bit of discussion on the payroll protection program. And we'll kind of fit that in somewhere either at the end before committee reports, or if something runs, short on, or we don't use all the time on another item, so.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion with the amendment.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Mojo to approve the agenda, second by Commissioner Ebinger. Any further Okay, yep.
I was just going to mention that Wildrise watershed thing.
Is your mic on?
Going to mention that Wildrise watershed thing, contract. I don't think Becker County has signed that yet, right?
That's correct, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so just the people are aware that Becker County did not sign this one, so. But we can still go ahead with it without Becker County, just
All right.
a note of interest.
I think we need to get approval from Bowser in order to go through with it, but the plan is that that won't hold us up.
Okay. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. Motion carried. Okay, we'll move on to citizens to be heard. Do we have any citizens to be heard this morning? There's nobody in the office. Do we have anybody online?
We do not, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you. So then we will move on to the approval of the bills and vouchers. And we just got those here. They have arrived.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Gross, second by Commissioner Cayley. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, the same sign. Motion carried. Approval of minutes from February 2nd.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Cayley, second by Commissioner Ebinger. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. Motion carried. And our next is our update on COVID-19 with Public Health Director Kathy McKay, and Jamie's here again with us this morning. Before you even get started, once again, what a tremendous job you folks are doing. From what we're hearing in the community, it's just really a job well done.
Thank you.
Yep.
And that's from the team, because the team
Yes,
is
well, you
working
can,
hard on that.
yeah. That message to your whole group there.
Thanks, will do. So, good morning, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. I handed out the latest data report, and I think most notable is our active cases are down. They're at 46, so that's really good. We're seeing less cases, and the cumulative deaths are at 84. And our 14-day case rate is 21.34. That's really significantly lower than we've seen in months, so that's
over
really
100,
good.
right?
Pardon me?
That was over 100.
It was over 100, yes. So that's been really, the numbers are really looking great. So our cases reported per week are, you can see on the graph that they are still down, so that's good. The cumulative cases, the age ranges, obviously haven't changed from the last week. So we're still seeing the active cases right now, the 30 to 34 range is the highest. And cumulative overall is the 19 to 20 age range and 24 to 25. So those ranges are still about the same. Hospitalizations and ICU are remaining manageable across the state of Minnesota, but also in our hospitals and on the Fargo side as well. So that's everything is looking great. On the very last page, I added a page of the variants of the COVID-19. We have 3 different variant strains that they're following. The B117, the B135-1, and then the P1. So the 2 that are been evident in Minnesota is the P1 strain. We also have the B117 strain. So you can see the reported cases in the United States. Most of it is the B117. That's 1,173. That strain came from the UK. And so that one, it may be, they're studying all of these strains, and that's the most widespread, of course, across the states. As you see, 40 states are reporting that B117. And that one, the scientists are still, and again, they're studying all of these, but they're looking at if there's an increase in risk of death with these strains or increase in worsening illness. So this one is one that may be associated with increase in deaths. So there, again, studies continue. 17 cases of the B1-351, so 8 states reporting that. And then the P1, there's only 2 states reporting that P1. The P1 is from Brazil. And then the B1-351 is from South Africa. So just so you kind of have a sense of hearing about those 3 different strains that they're checking. They're saying that the B1-351, the Moderna vaccine, may be less effective in that strain. But again, they're still studying these strains, so we don't have all of the information, but there's some suggestion to that. More to come on the variant strains, but we have to be conscientious about continuing what we're doing, wearing our masks, staying 6 feet apart, avoiding crowds, et cetera, because of the strains that are circulating now, and they expect to see, there's some suggestion that we may, of course, see more increases in these strains as they're studying this and getting tested for it. So that is all I have. And
Kathy, I happen to, looking at your chart on active cases, it's nice to see that from ages 50 and over, there's eight active cases in Clay County. That's, and there's actually none over the age of 69, which is really, I'm wondering if maybe that isn't part of the early start on vaccines with the elderly people.
I think so. Yeah, I think that's certainly been.
So I mean,
helpful.
I think it's another encouraging sign that people should get the vaccine, because it appears to be working on those that have had the opportunity to get it. So I just want to point that out. It's an observation that probably makes sense. So,
Yeah.
okay.
Listen to your report, it sounds like you're talking about some airlines here, B117. But I had a question on the doses, the first dose and the second dose that you get. Is there a difference between them, or is it the same thing?
In terms of,
The power or whatever, because, I mean, when I went to get my second dose, they had a bunch of needles laying there, she just grabbed one, and I don't think it said first or second on it, I don't know, is there a difference, or
it's the same vaccine.
it's the same vaccine, the same dose?
Correct.
Okay,
It just gives you, you get the partial immunity from the first dose, and then the more complete immunity after the second dose. Then that reaches that 95%. After the first dose, it's about 50%. But after the second dose, you get up to about 95% immunity.
she did a good job, I mean, I didn't even notice that I had a second one, I mean, no problems at all.
Good. When you said you grabbed it, I was thinking you grabbed it and gave it to yourself. I was
Oh,
just
no.
going to question that.
Help yourself.
Kathy, on the variants, we're doing a lot of testing with the saliva tests. Does that have the capacity to identify variants, or are we tracking it through the saliva tests?
Yes, anything that goes up to the public health labs have the ability to test for the variants.
So would the vault tests that are being given here in the community would be looking for variants as well?
Yes, they would catch those variants, exactly right.
Good, thanks.
Okay, let Jamie talk about our vaccination process.
So looking at the data for vaccine administration in Minnesota through February 13th, Clay County, for people who have the total number of people that have had at least one dose, 10.5% of the population, and Minnesota-wide, 12.1%. So we fell behind this last week. And then the total number of people who've completed the series in Clay County, 4%, and statewide, 4.3% of the population. Looking at those age 50 to 64 with at least one dose, 14% in Clay County and 12.3% in Minnesota. And then people age 65 with at least one dose of the vaccine, 36% and 35% in Minnesota. And we have been focusing on the healthcare workers and those in the E12 and childcare. So that might be a reflection of those numbers that are higher in Minnesota, in Clay County. And then just to talk a little bit about what we are doing in Clay County Public Health. Last week, we had 600 doses, and of those, 200 were second doses. This week, we have 900 doses we're administering, and all of those are second doses. And then we have both Pfizer and Moderna. So we're doing second doses for the most part, but we have also requested we had requested additional doses if we receive them to finish up not to finish up, but to work on the E12 and childcare population. So we are not yet sure whether we will receive those, but we've requested those as well. So
Amy, how far along, what percentage of that group would you say is complete?
We had to do a survey to complete for doses that we were requesting for next week. And so we're estimating about 1,000 of that E12 and childcare to finish up in Clay County. And then we've got we're guessing, we have pretty solid data to back that up, about 300 people that are in healthcare and long-term care. And so we did request doses for those, but we also are doing 460 second doses next week. So the second doses and the first doses are continuing to come on top of each other now. So we're looking at about 1,200 doses for next week that we're requesting.
I was at a Lakes Country cooperative meeting last week, and they deal a lot with school districts. And one of the things that they said is that they're getting a tremendous amount of positive, or teachers willing to get the shot. I think that's good. I think they said there was one school district, I think, that had 2 teachers that refused to take it. So
Yeah.
it's kind of encouraging too to see that profession is understanding the need for that. So
Exactly.
Mr. Chair.
yes.
I've also heard from the early childhood educators in the area that the process here has been so smooth, and they're just so thankful for the work that you've done. Thank you for advocating for them to get those shots, and glowing reviews.
Thank you. The challenge is the time frame that we get the vaccine, and then to try to get that used up within the 72 hours. And we're also trying to do some accommodation for schools and other businesses they don't want all their employees to potentially have that second dose because they're hearing about some symptoms from the second dose. And so we're trying to alternate those as well so that we give them a couple of options as much as possible to register. So. And then otherwise, the pharmacy retail program, has been in the news, and I have just done some checking, and basically they're saying to go online and register, and they will let you know when there's doses available. And Sanford and Essentia should be receiving vaccine doses as well, and so they're just encouraging people to wait until they reach out to you for that vaccine.
Do we know if the pharmacies in Clay County, like Walgreens and CVS, have they received any vaccines?
I don't know. They're discouraging us from calling. And so because of that, they're saying go on our website. If you go to the websites for them, it just basically says to register. You have to set up an account to register with them. I did call the Walmart pharmacy yesterday, and I was able to keep pushing buttons till I was able to talk to someone. And they said, you need to go to their website and register. And again, you have to set up an account to register with them. But when I asked, well, what about people who are not able to do that? They said that if you keep pushing buttons, you'll get to talk to a person.
I find it interesting that our public health departments can't know whether or not these facilities have vaccines or not. I think that's kind of astonishing, but that's not your fault. All right.
But they are overwhelmed with calls, and so I think that's an important thing to note too, that people are calling and they're trying to divert people to the website and register, and then when vaccine's available, they'll be told. So,
But yeah, we would like to have those numbers. We hope to have all the numbers, and we haven't been able to get those in the
Well,
past.
to get a really good picture, you should really know that, shouldn't you?
yes.
Exactly.
Nice.
Kind of your
Yeah,
job.
exactly right. Yes, and then to know what the clinics are receiving as well, and we are getting information about that. So we're pushing to get the pharmacy information also, so.
Well, one thing I noticed, when you push something, you usually end up being successful, so.
I try not to be a pit bull, but maybe that's what they say.
With a smile.
All right.
Well, I think in order to reduce the calls that they're overwhelmed with, letting the local public health agency know so that they can advertise it on their behalf would be helpful as well.
Right, yeah.
I digress.
Yeah, well, it's just, a little common sense goes a long way, I guess. Anything else?
Okay, I think that.
Well, once again, thank you
should
for
be
your
it.
report.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good, there's good numbers. All right, Steve, we're going to talk about the business relief program.
Morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. I'm pleased to report that as of Friday afternoon, we've received all the necessary paperwork from our 78 businesses in Clay County who successfully applied for our business relief plan. Our staff worked over the weekend to ensure that the final applications were processed for payment. And so we'll be looking to provide those checks this week, along with the business relief distribution. The businesses that had a food, beverage, and lodging licensing will also be receiving their 6-month reimbursement for fee equivalent as a part of that, and that'll be broken down on the memo portion of their check showing the business relief and the reimbursement. So the remaining businesses for food, beverage, and lodging will be receiving their payments in the coming days as the auditor treasurers establish vouchers for those different businesses that already or currently don't have one. And so, again, those businesses should be looking for their relief checks by the end of this week. With that, I would yield for any questions.
That's great news. Commissioner?
I was also going to echo that I appreciate the fact that we were able to get those. I know that took a lot of legwork on staff's end to make sure that we had everything wrapped up so that we could get the payments out, but I'm hopeful that it comes in time to save some of our county businesses.
Very good. You can sit right there. Because we have a few minutes before the public hearing, this might be a good time to bring up my agenda addition item because it has to do with relief. As you all may be aware, early on in this process, there was a Paycheck protection program that was done by the federal government for businesses. And if they were used for loan proceeds and they were used for qualifying costs, and if 60% of the loan proceeds are used for payroll cost, then the federal government would forgive the loan, and also the federal taxes would not have to pay the federal taxes. What we're learning is the state of Minnesota has not conformed to the federal tax law, which means that those revenues or those dollars are taxable for Minnesota tax. And one of the big concerns, and I've heard from some of our local businesses, that on the North Dakota, they did adopt the federal. So once again, you've got businesses on the North Dakota side that don't have to pay state tax dollars on that, and on the Minnesota side, we do. And it's just, to me, it's another hardship or burden that falls on to those businesses to have to pay income tax on those dollars. There is some activity going on in the legislature right now and they're hoping that, so for most businesses, they have to report their income tax returns by March 15th, not April 15th, like individual returns. So there's some activity going on right now at the state level. I know the Chamber of Commerce is involved with it, and I think there's gonna, I think the city, or Derek LaPointe, I think, is also working on it. The Ward Business Association is doing some work on it as well to try to encourage. But I just, you know, I wanted to bring it up here. I think it would certainly be appropriate for us to maybe send something to our legislatures supporting any efforts to reduce that burden on our local businesses that have suffered so much already. So I know it's short notice. I didn't get, you know, I just learned of this yesterday of what was going on, and so I didn't get a chance to have it as part of the packet, but I don't know if you want to have some discussion on this now, but I certainly think we should send something out. Commissioner Ebinger.
Yeah, I'm going to concur on that. We saw yesterday that the state, and they have their bills to pay too, but the deficit's not materializing like they anticipated. Their tax revenues are acceptable. And you can't say the same about the financial situation. A lot of the people that put in for PPP. And again, it's another border city issue that we face. We're sitting across the river from part of our community where these benefits are extended to their businesses, and we're taxing them. So I think expressing those concerns to the legislatures and the governor is very appropriate.
Commissioner Mojo.
I agree. Part of the application process for those folks, they were under the understanding that it was going to be waived. And you know, for whatever reason, there are people out there that applied thinking that they were gonna have it waived, and so I think it's important for us to follow up on that. A letter certainly wouldn't hurt. You know, I think maybe we could go, you know, a step further than just our local, legislators. I think there are some key folks that we should probably send it to as well, and we can probably talk later about that, Steve, but I would appreciate that.
Well, you know, again, I think Commissioner Ebinger, I think we could certainly have a letter addressed to the governor and, you know, maybe to the leader of the House and the Senate, as well as then to our local legislatures. And of course, then I think we should even copy AMC on it as well, that you know, we're encouraging this action.
Well, and two, I think our senators for our state also have local staff in town, and I think for them, them to know that as well.
Right.
I know that
So that'd be like Andy Moore.
Klobuchar's office and Tina Smith's and also
Yeah,
Representative Fishbach.
yeah, that's a very good idea. Right. So
I don't know if you need a motion on it.
I would love to have a motion on
Okay,
that.
I'll make a motion, we forward that letter, or
I will, okay.
not forward the letter, but organize the letter, whatever.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Gross, and was it second?
I'll
by,
second the motion, yeah.
Commissioner Mojo. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. And then Steve, I don't know if you want to draft that, and maybe, you know, if you want to just shoot it to me before you send it out, and we can look at it.
Will do, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. That's good. That's great. Okay, so we're still a little bit ahead of time for a public hearing.
Mr. Chair, I could do my two change order items if that would work for the
Sure.
board.
Let's go ahead with that. That's item number 9. Is that your first one?
The first one would be, number 9, change order number 31. This is specific to the juvenile center project. If you take a look at the third page, there's 2 additions and 2 credits. The first part is a shower, 924, 925 slope correction. As they got into making the adjustments in the existing area, the water began to flow outside of the two showers and begin to pool outside of that, creating a safety issue. This was outside of the original scope of the project, and so that was an addition and change that was made. There are 2 credits. Both of those are having to do with their hydronics issue that they're continuing to have over at the juvenile center, but we did receive 2 credits on that. And then there's an $800 addition for grab bars in the non-secure program. It's just an added level of security in those juveniles have to have access to be able to leave the facility, but it's a bar that doesn't let them just bust through the door. There's a little timer that goes with that. So, the total addition to the GMP on this request is $3,282. We're coming up, we're at about 10 months on the juvenile center now. We're looking here within the next month or so to have the 11-month walkthrough. We're pretty close, other than we're just continue to work on the hydronics, the flushing of the system, but I think we're getting closer on that. With that, I'd yield for any questions.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Gross, second by Commissioner Ebinger, and I do want to note that that's, that's, so the dollar amount on change order number 32 was contingent on 31 being approved, right?
Yes, 31.
Dollar amounts that you had it below.
Yes, yeah, they did it a little backwards.
Oh, that's fine. I think the numbers are right. Okay. Any further discussion on that motion? Did you have something else, Steve, on that one?
No.
Okay. All right, no other discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. Okay, so then we'll go to number 32.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Change order number 32 deals with the correctional facility project. As we've talked at previous board meetings this past summer and fall, once the project completed, we had some different issues with seepage into our tunnel that they used from the correctional facility to law enforcement, to the point that it was pooling. We had an original plan that we had utilized the remaining contingencies. Once we had the inspector come through, there were some additional things that we needed to do that pushed that project up an additional $17,807. Just for the board's knowledge, we did add 3 sump holes throughout the tunnel area, and then had to pump it back towards the correctional facility. There's some additional electrical costs, plumbing costs, and also detention security for those areas to ensure that didn't have any issues with our inmates. And so that was the first portion. CP 58 was adding sound panels in the visitation areas. If you recall, back in the law enforcement center, we had some issues in our interview rooms with when there were people in both rooms being able to hear from side to side in each room, and so they were having some issues with that in the jail visitation room, so they added panels there. And we've been having some existing issues with our cast iron check valves that construction engineers, Joe and Klein McCarthy, have been working with our consultants to try to figure out why we've been having some different issues with corrosion. And so they're replacing that. We did have our 11-month walkthrough here about a month ago. In fact, the warranty on the second phase of the correctional facility is up this week. Joe has a list of items that continue to go on with the warranty process to ensure that we get the product that we need. We're hoping to close both these projects up here in the very near future. We are looking at the potential of having one more change order for the correctional facility, and probably needing to add some sort of water softener to help with that corrosion issue. I think they have it dialed in now. So
That corrosion problem started months after we started using that facility, and I guess I'm just curious of why this wouldn't all be under a warranty situation.
that they've done they've made multiple changes to this. And my understanding is the existing issue was something that came up after with the water, and so it was outside of the scope.
I don't know, I use Moorhead water and I don't have problems with my fixtures in my house.
Yeah. It's been strange because this, similar fixtures are in the law enforcement center. We're not having corrosion issues there. But they work closely with the city of Moorhead. We've done multiple testing of the water, and this is the solution that they're hoping to bring forward. But the total change of that to the GMP would be $25,744. With that, I'd yield for any additional questions.
Commissioner Mojo.
Just further discussion on some of them. I think that the sound panels for sure make sense, absolutely make sense. And some of the tunnel issues absolutely make sense. That we designed part of that correctional facility around that tunnel because it was so valuable to us to maintain that. I do have issues with the corrosion piece. I think there are some valid points that Commissioner Campbell brought up in terms of that coming up so soon after the construction. I'm not sure what the best answer is, but I struggle with it.
Well, we've already replaced some. We're not re-replacing the replacements, are we?
Yes, Mr. Chair, the cast iron didn't, when they replaced it with the cast iron, they had to, now they're doing the different valves, so.
So was there no warranty on the items that were replaced?
I think, I should have brought Joe Olson here this morning. He's been actively participating in the meetings with construction engineers and Klein McCarthy and the consultants. But there was warranty on that. I think
Well, he's on our agenda for a little bit later, isn't he?
or, yeah, we can maybe ask him. Yeah, clarify.
Well, I don't know that we should hold this up, but I think that we should certainly express some concerns about CP 59. How long is this gonna go on where we're gonna be doing that, and and why wasn't this caught earlier, I guess?
Oh, we do need to get it fixed, so I'm gonna make a motion to approve this, but I think I really would like to check that
Yeah.
erosion thing out, I mean, that doesn't make sense that we have to replace something that quick. And spend $4,500 on it.
I'll second the motion as well. I'm just concerned that we're replacing cast iron
Yeah.
I was
when this project has not been operational more than 3 years.
Right.
and I don't even know why they're using cast iron. I mean, I know, I'm sorry, I didn't write that question. This is the comment.
All right, well, we have a motion by Commissioner Gross, second by Commissioner Mojo to approve number 32 to the gross maximum price. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. All right, those two were done, but I think you need to talk to them about that.
Will do, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I will make a motion to open the public hearing and a request for a final approval of Nugget Investments platted subdivision in Holly Township.
All right, very good. We have a motion to open.
I will,
Okay, faster.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. Just give me a second here. I want to get,
So you want to give me a second too to finish the motion procedure here?
oh, I'm sorry.
So we have a motion by Commissioner Mojo to open the public hearing and a second by Commissioner Gross. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose the same? Okay, Matt, now
We
the
heard you
floor
say
is all
you gotta be
yours.
faster, so you.
Yeah, I'm,
All right,
all right.
good morning.
Good morning.
And do we have anybody online for this hearing that you know of?
Yes, we do. We have Raymond Redding. He's the project proposer, as well as Chris Heyer, the engineer or surveyor who worked on
Okay,
the plat.
all right, very good. All right. And we did receive some information within our packet.
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Attachment A? No, wait, no, it's not attachment A.
Mr. Chair, I just
Yes.
have a question for Matt. Have you received correspondence from the public?
I've not heard anything from the public since the planning commission meeting.
And Colleen, have you received any correspondence? Okay, thank you.
All right, so at their January 26th Planning Commission meeting, the Planning Commission heard a request from Raymond Redding of Nugget Investments LLC for a 5-lot platted subdivision. I feel like I'm really loud. And they made a motion to recommend approval of this platted subdivision to the county board. And so just to give you kind of an overview and show you where this is in the county. All right, so the proposed subdivision is called Mariah Lake Estates. And Mariah Lake is a really shallow lake. It's located kind of just southwest of Hawley and south of Highway 10. And so this is Mariah Lake. The proposed subdivision would go on the east side of the lake. So on this parcel right here. Show you an aerial of the plat. So this is the proposed plat. It's a 5-lot plat. The lots range from about 5 acres to 8 acres, and they all have 300 feet or more of shoreline, 200 feet or more of frontage on the road. They would be accessed via a township road, 14th Avenue South, and then 210th Street South. And so even though there are 5 lots going in, one of the requests from the township was to have shared accesses between 2 of the lots, or in pairs of 2. So Lot 1 is actually, they're proposing to share with an access that already exists with the property to the north, and then lots 2 and 3 would share an access. And then lots 4 and 5 would share an access. And that's just at the request of the township, just to cut down on the number of accesses and culverts that would need to go in, just to make that ditch easier to maintain.
How does that work? Do they have a permanent easement or something then, or?
Yeah, the developer is working on drafting easements for each of the lots, and then also getting that into the restrictive covenants as well.
And is that allowed under our county ordinances? Shared
We don't prohibit shared accesses. I think we discourage them typically on our county roads, but on a township road, it's we leave it up to the township on what they would prefer.
I know that, I think cities, usually have, where you can't have a shared access.
That's correct, yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, I was at the Holly Township meeting, and they did discuss this. I think it's important to note, too, that there's an existing residential property that one of the lots would share an access with, and that is being worked out with the landowner. They were amenable to that correction. And I think because it's so close to a lake and the drainage is an issue, I think in this case, it does make sense to limit the amount of culverts that are going in there in case you get one of them, that's not placed correctly. It could really affect the drainage.
Yep.
We've seen in some other areas along lakes where culverts have become issues.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, continue. Was there more questions?
Yeah, and so all 5 of these lots have been, the buildable area on these lots has been delineated, so they all have over 2 acres of buildable area. The developer has gotten letters from septic installers and a well driller, just saying that all these lots would be suitable for at least 2 septic systems, and then well water would be adequate as well.
And that is a requirement in our code, right?
That is, yes. Yep.
Both of those.
Yep. So, the lake itself is a natural environment lake. It's, a subdivision would be allowed on that, type of lake. As long as they meet our shoreland standards. It's a pretty shallow lake. It's about 8 feet, I think, maximum depth. So we're not gonna be seeing any jet boats or even boats with motors on this
Probably not
lake at all.
fishing either then, if it's,
I don't think there's really any fish in this lake at all.
if it's
So,
that shallow. It's-
yeah, it is impaired for nutrients, excess nutrients. So swimming probably during certain times of the year would not be recommended either. I don't know if that's something that the potential buyers would need to be made aware of, but yeah,
Is that
probably not.
Is that, what do they call that, that blue algae or whatever that can
Yeah.
create problems?
Blue-green algae.
Yeah.
Yep. So it is impaired for aquatic recreation. So the planning commission just had a couple of conditions that they wanted to put on this plat, and actually, if you look at this update, most of the changes had been made. There are just some minor changes that had to happen to the plat. Just changing a street name to the correct street name, just changing Commissioner Gross's signature to Commissioner Campbell's, identifying all the wetlands. Some other conditions that they wanted were to work with the Clay Soil and Water Conservation, SWCD, to avoid and mitigate impacts to wetlands, just because there are a couple that are on the property. And then to add language in their restrictive covenants that requires landowners to contact Clay County Planning and Zoning before undertaking any building or land alteration project. So the covenants are pretty comprehensive. The township approved this, I think, was at their February 2nd meeting? Yeah. And they had some comments as well about no twin homes or secondary homes on any of these lots, so that would fit with our development code as well.
Going back, Matt, to your comments about the impaired water issue, is that, so obviously those who buy these lots are gonna be aware of that. What's the disclosure process for future owners? Is there a requirement on disclosure that could be an impaired water and there could not be swimming, and or is a new buyer gonna be in for a big surprise?
Well, it's all public information, so though if someone's gonna look for that, I don't know. I don't think there's any, to my knowledge, there isn't any requirements that be disclosed at all. And it doesn't mean that you certainly can't recreate on this lake. It's just that it has an aquatic recreation impairment on it. And that could change in the future depending on environment and depending on conditions. So there's a chance that it could be delisted in the future. It's probably not likely because I think a lot of the impairment is natural, honestly. It's a shallow lake, so a lot of it's just internal.
Just from runoff?
Yeah, so,
Yeah.
yep.
Commissioner Gross?
Have they contacted the Clay Soil and Water about the wetlands, or when is that done? Before they sell or after they sell, or whose responsibility is it?
I could let the applicant speak to that, just because they're on on the line here, but to my knowledge, no, they have not.
Okay.
Would you like me to speak?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, this is Raymond Redding. I'm the developer out there. Yeah, I've worked with the Soil and Water Conservation District before we started any project or other development too. I have them come out and do a site investigation, and they can look at and delineate any wetlands they seem to be an issue. But every place that we would be locating a home, we wouldn't even want to be in a wetland at all, because it would impact the home itself. So, and we also have this Circular 39 and the coordinate L. US Fish has delineations already out there on the maps, and those are already been located on the plat. And usually those wetlands are located in areas that the topography is so steep that you couldn't even build in it anyways. So a lot of these wetlands that they're bringing up are probably pretty much a moot point. The only couple wetlands that could maybe partially be an issue, but really not an issue, are PMAs, type 1s, which is like your front yard. Seasonally, they have just a little bit of water in it for a couple days out of the year. But I still would get the soil and water involved before we start digging.
Are these registered wetlands then, or what, I mean, that.
Yeah, they're registered, well, they're mapped out by the US Fish and Wildlife Service, the coordinate L and Circular 39 maps that are available. And I believe that Matt had those available for you folks too.
So Matt, I look at these 7 conditions that the planning commission put on it, and I guess I just have questions on number 5 and 6. If we're to approve this now, it says work with clay, soil and water. But it's kind of gray to me when it says work with, but what if one party doesn't agree with the other party on what should be done? It's kind of ambiguous, I think, but, and then the language about declaration for restrictive covenants, that goes to kind of what Commissioner Gross said. Should this stuff be done before we approve this, or are we just saying that we're going to approve it provided that is done? Is that what we're doing here?
Mr. Chair, yeah, that's kind of what the planning commission, that was their thinking, is that prior to any work being done, that the developer or landowner contacts the SWCD. And a landowner should already be contacting planning and zoning about any building permits or land alteration permits. Yeah.
Okay, Commissioner Wojcik.
Thank you. We've worked with this developer in the past, and what had happened is this is similar to what the planning commission had recommended. All of those, every person that buys one of these tracts will need to get approval from the planning department in order to build. And so the reason that is in there is because they'll have to go through Matt's office. Matt will then make sure to address, see if they've addressed the wetland issues per this SWCD, because not every lot has the same existing issue with the wetland. They're mainly down by the lake, and so that's not in the buildable area as well. But I think that's to answer your question, why the planning commission had kind of that recommendation that may seem gray, but there still is opportunity for the planning department to make sure that they're following up on that, especially with the covenants. That's something that Holly Township has really been adamant about, making sure that it's, those covenants are restrictive enough to maintain the rural nature out there.
Well, I guess if that probably clarifies it for me, because when you just say work with, that could be a lawyer's dream to have work with language on there.
Smiling under the mask.
But yeah, our county attorney is smiling under his mask over there. But anyway, I just, so that I can, as long as they have to go, each one of those would have to go back and work with just doesn't mean
And if
required.
If I'm correct, they still need to go to Holly Township for every building permit as well. They
That
have
is
their own
correct.
planning commission, Holly Township does, so it would have to be, there's 2 levels of applications that still need to be approved on every building.
And Mr. Chair, when building permit applications come in areas where I would suspect there would be wetlands, typically what I do is I either reach out to, well, I check first myself just on what we have information available, and then I reach out to the SWCD and ask them for their opinion on if there are any wetlands present on the property or not. And if that is the case, then I put the landowner or the applicant in touch with someone at the SWCD, and they'll go out and do a delineation or an inspection.
Is somebody waiting on the call in the waiting room?
Again, just from my time and experience on this, I would have preferred number 5 being worded differently, but,
Well, Mr. Chair, we certainly, you could certainly change that if you wished.
Brian,
As a
do
condition.
you understand what I'm talking about there?
I think the bigger question is wordsmithing it correctly to get to the point of what you're trying to make sure that work is done and completed.
Well, I don't want to hold this up. I think I'm somewhat satisfied based on what Commissioner Mojo said of what each of them would still have to do, but I think if there's a condition, the condition should have some certainty to it.
Oh,
And
why,
there's no certainty in number 5.
right, so could we change it to have SWCD approval based on that on each lot?
Yeah, that I would be more
But that's not holding up the approval of the plat,
No.
that's holding up the approval. I mean, you can make sure that's added in.
Well, we can change the condition. Our board can change the condition wording.
Right, but that's kind of an after-the-fact thing, too, so I think that's, I mean, we're seeking approval of the platted subdivision. Our concern is we want to make sure that when there are buildings added, they have the approval of the SWCD in terms of mitigating the wetland, correct? So then maybe what we'd like added is for any future permits, to make sure that that's added as a condition.
Any future building permits?
Correct.
And that could certainly be done.
So are you suggesting a change to the 7 conditions or adding another condition?
I think maybe the change would be, and Brian's the wordsmith here, would be that on, before approval of any permits, they need to have the SWCD's approval to avoid and mitigating impacts to wetlands.
That's the point I've been trying to make, because
Ray,
this
does
doesn't
that
say it
seek-
requires their approval.
Ray, does that make sense?
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, for me, it's not an issue because I'm just gonna get SWCD out there right away, first thing in the spring, and have them go over the whole property and just figure it out right away for all the lots, so that's gonna be a non-issue on my end.
Well,
Plus, I would never build in a wetland anyways.
Well, I appreciate that, but I hope you can understand,
Oh, yeah.
What
That's why I got
I'm
an issue with
raising
it.
here is that you have a condition that has no certainty to it, and
Yep.
and if it's a condition, there should be some certainty to an outcome. And that's
Correct.
that's kind of where I'm at on it. So
Yep.
so
And I respect your position on it, and for my end, it's a non-issue too, because I will take care of it, so right away.
Sure.
And plus, I'm a certified stormwater pollution prevention plan, so I have to get with the MPCA and I have to get all my permits too for this. That's above and beyond all this. And, I've been certified in all those aspects too for this, so and they go above and beyond even what the SWCD would do, so.
So we're just looking for a 3-word change. So work with the should be changed to get approval from on number 5, right?
yeah, that's in essence what I think that, I would be more comfortable with that as a condition. Commissioner Mojo, are you?
Yep.
I got one more question. At the planning commission meeting, there was concern about the maintenance of a township road there. Do you feel there's a problem with that, or is that not a problem?
Are you asking me?
Yes.
Yeah, no, I don't see it being a problem at all. Plus, there's two other, so actually, I think let's hear there's two other ways. There's actually three ways to get out of that property. So if there ever was an issue in one spot, which I've driven through there a lot, and I've never had an issue in the spring, so.
Okay.
So maybe if I could suggest just slightly different wording than what yours was, and it would still be just changing the first three words, and then it says receive approval from, I think might be a little bit better than get, I think.
Yeah, that's more fun.
So, I'm throwing that out there as a suggested change to number 5. Other than that, I think that, everything else seems to be fine. And we would do that, once we close the hearing. We would make that change. Do we have any other comments on while the hearing is open by anybody? Any other people care to talk? Any citizens? We don't have any citizens on?
There are no citizens here, but I think it's important to note that there were just a handful of concerns raised about, from different residents about what this would do to the rural aspect of it. And from my perspective, I think that they've done a really good job by having covenants that make sure that these are not going to be overcrowded lots. These are not going to be lots with apartments or, added to them. They're large size lots. The limiting the amount of accesses makes it less city-like. So I think that while it was a concern of different residents, I think the township, the planning commission, and possibly this board are really making sure that we address those concerns by conditions. I will also say that it's really encouraging to see developments like this go into, we don't have sugar sand, beautiful beaches like some of the lakes area counties, but I think that there is a niche for people that want to live on places like this, and I am hopeful that more people would want to come live in Clay County. I can imagine that the sunsets on this particular development would be absolutely gorgeous, so that's my comments.
All right, any other comments? Matt, have you completed your report on this?
Yes.
Yeah, and the findings were all there in accordance with what our,
Yeah, the planning commission, Mr. Chair, did go through the findings of fact, and they were all either met or not applicable.
and it's our responsibility then to also concur with those findings, is that correct, as a board?
Well,
We need to go through them.
I don't know.
Well, we close the public hearing and then go through.
yeah, and our development code is not very clear on if you need to go through the findings of fact for a subdivision.
Yeah, I think in the past, the planning commission needs to do it from the recommendation standpoint, and then we just can concur with them. We've read, you've got them, you've been able to read them.
Yeah.
I don't know, Brian, if we have to individually.
I would agree. I mean, the idea is they've gone through them. You could choose to if you believe there's something that's a discrepancy and you want to discuss that out. But I would say as a policy matter, you would not need to go through those each time.
Thank you. Okay, anything else? Matt, have you concluded your presentation?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you.
Make a
The
motion to
applicant
close.
have anything else?
Anything else from the applicant? Okay, I am hearing.
No, thank you. Sorry about that.
Okay, very good. All right, thank you.
Yep,
All right.
thanks.
Commissioner Gross, I think you were about to,
Make a motion to close the hearing.
we have a motion to close by Commissioner Gross. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Ebinger. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, the same. Motion carried. We have before us recommendation for platted subdivision approval with what was 7 conditions recommended by the planning commission. What's the board's wishes?
I'll make a motion to approve the subdivision with the change in number 5 to receive
Approval.
formal approval,
Receive approval from?
receive approval from the Plain Soil and Water.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Gross, second by Commissioner Mojo. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. All right. Thank
you.
Mr. Chair, can I?
Thank you, and I want to thank them, the presenters too, for working with our planning commission to get this plat approved.
Can I just follow up? When I was at the Holly Township meeting, there was a concern raised by a resident that just basically said our county comprehensive plan doesn't allow, or not allow, but doesn't address for these rural developments in such a way. And so I had talked with Holly Township and the residents there that we are in the process of updating that, and we certainly will be addressing subdivisions that are going in throughout the county in that plan. And they seem to be open and happy to hear that, because that will make their job easier going forward. So wanted to note that.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you. I think you have me again.
Yes, we do. You want to give your
Should I get
planning and
up and
zoning
come
update?
back?
Yeah, you want to, yeah. You got to go to a different chair to give that report. No, okay. Matt, you're up for your update, annual update.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. So this is the update for Clay County Planning and Zoning. I'm going to go kind of start by giving maybe a higher level overview of planning and zoning and kind of what we do before I dive into some specifics. So just to start with our mission statement, the mission of the Clay County Planning Office is to promote public health, safety, and general welfare of the county citizens through development, implementation, administration of appropriate planning, zoning, and subdivision regulations which follow applicable state and federal laws and the county comprehensive plan. Maybe not the most inspiring mission statement, but it's thorough, I guess, I'd say that. So what we do, few things. On the planning side of things, we help administer, develop the county comprehensive plan. And with that, administer the land development code as well. On the permitting side, administratively, review and issue building permits, land alteration permits in shoreland areas, and then minor subdivisions when we are making one parcel into 2 parcels. And then we also provide staffing and support for the 3 boards, the Board of Adjustment, you all as Board of Commissioners, and then the Planning Commission. Do investigations and enforcement, and floodplain administration, and we administer the shoreland program as well. So I'm gonna just walk through the 3 boards that we staff and kind of what they do and what their role is. Because a lot of the decisions that are made by these boards. So start with the Board of Adjustments. The Board of Adjustment is comprised of 5 citizens in the county. They serve 3-year terms. They're appointed by you all, and they primarily make decisions on variances. So if someone is experiencing some sort of practical difficulty or hardship due to the development code, they can request a variance from the Board of Adjustment to get relief from that particular aspect of their standard in the development code. Unless it's a use. You can't say you want to open up like a motorsports track in a zoning district where it's not allowed. You can't get a variance to open that up. Mainly, a lot of it's due to setbacks and lot sizes and things like that. They also appeal any administrative decisions that are made. So if I were to deny a building permit and the applicant didn't agree with that decision, they could appeal that too. That would be their process for appealing, be to the Board of Adjustment. So the Planning Commission is also established by the Board of Commissioners. It's an 11-member commission. It's comprised of a good mix of county, incorporated areas, rural areas, our SWCD. There's a Moorhead City Council person as well on it, and they are also appointed to 3-year terms by the Board of Commissioners. And so what their roles are, providing guidance on the comprehensive plan, land use development, and they're also the decision makers for use permits. Conditional use permits is the most common type of permit. It's basically granting a use for a business or an activity in a zoning district, provided that certain conditions are met. They also issue interim use permits, which are very similar, but they can expire upon passage of a set date or a triggering event. Most of our aggregate pits or gravel mining operations in the county are granted under an interim use permit. They also review and make recommendations to you all about text amendments to the code, rezoning, petitions, and then major subdivisions as well, which you all just made a decision on earlier. And then temporary uses, so uses that would not necessarily be allowed in a particular zoning district. But if they're temporary, being that you're not gonna build anything or it's not gonna last longer than 3 months, they could temporarily grant that. If you're gonna have like a fair or a carnival or something like that. And then you all, so the Board of Commissioners, your role, and this is what's established in our development code, is to provide enforcement and administration, and that's typically delegated to the Board of Adjustment, Planning Commission, and staff. Public hearings, that responsibility has been assigned primarily to the Planning Commission and Board of Adjustment. Though you do hear appeals, you may hear appeals from time to time on Planning Commission decisions on use permits, and then hearings for amendments, as well as subdivisions, plats. All right, any questions at all on kind of the big picture, what our office does? No? All right. Well, getting into this year, Commissioner Campbell, I brought some stats for you. Looking at building permits over the past 5 years, and so this is from 2015 to 2020. Last year, we're kind of on our higher end with building permits. We issued 161, and also on the higher end with new dwellings, so new houses. So we had about 35 permits for new houses last year.
And again, for everybody who's listening, these are for outside of our incorporated
Yes.
communities.
Yep, absolutely. So this is outside of the 11 incorporated communities in Clay County. And so what that looks like in terms of investment into Clay County, last year we approved permits for about $18 million worth of projects. And so with an average value per project is about $140,000. One thing that we saw when we looked at this is it looks like in the past couple of years, 2018 through 2020, there was a lot more smaller projects that happened. So like additions, outbuildings, things like that. That maybe if you can see this green line is kind of showing the average cost, and that kind of went down a little bit. And I think really that's what's driving that is a lot of those smaller, we're having more permits, but for smaller projects. Then for use trends, so this is the past 5 years of conditional use permits and interim use permits. The blue is the conditional use permits and the green is the interim use permits. So kind of a little bit of a downward trend last year compared to the prior year and our high of 2016.
Matt, do you want to?
You know, I know we've had discussion with other departments in terms of, you know, having, 2020 was different because of the pandemic, and we were having less public hearings really because of COVID, and I think people maybe just weren't taking on issues like that. So I think as we look back on that, it will be curious to see if we really are in a downward trend for those permits. If COVID played into that, you know, I think if we are in a downward trend, maybe we should look at, you know, why, but it's just a thought, curious.
I think you're spot on. I think there's an awful lot of it has to do with the pandemic. We have people's income levels were impacted and a lot of things that can make those decisions, so.
And
That's not surprising, I guess.
right, but I think that it's good for us as policymakers to see what housing stats in Clay County are doing, what are permit stats doing in Clay County, because if you get to a point where things are continuing on a downward trend, we need to address maybe why they are. Is it, you know, tax levels, which is certainly a concern for all of us, and just good to know going forward.
Absolutely. And Mr. Chair and Commissioners, it is interesting to look at, building permits kind of stayed on the higher end. And, you know, I don't know if I'd attributed that to more people being home and seeing like, oh, here's a project that I always wanted to do, but just haven't had the time to do it.
Right.
And so now's my opportunity. Also interesting to see that our new housing in rural Clay County is that's probably the second highest that it's been in 5 years. Yep.
So I haven't, and maybe I'm getting ahead of you, but I haven't heard you talk about commercial at all. Have we had any commercial activity in the rural areas?
Yeah, that, Mr. Chair, the conditional use or interim use permit trends would point to that, because if you're gonna open up commercial business in rural Clay County, you would more than likely need to obtain one of these two types of permits.
Unless it's in a highway commercial.
Unless it's in a highway commercial, yep. Then you would just need a building permit.
Right.
A majority of, and I can kind of show you, this is kind of small, but for the past 6 years, from 2015 and then into this year, kind of a breakdown of our commercial uses or permitted commercial uses. Majority of them far and away are gravel mines, so 32%. We've had community solar gardens that were permitted. Actually, 5 of those just went online this year, so they were permitted last year, and I think we have another one coming up here, just one this year. So we've had a couple of bigger home occupation permits, so people who are running businesses out of their homes. There's a gentleman who's doing like a car repair business up by Georgetown, pet cremation business in Riverton Township, so some things like that. Yep. And so, kind of following along with the trends in aggregate, wanted to show you one thing that we do collect quarterly is a gravel tax, and just wanted to kind of show you the past 5 years of our gravel tax revenue, and kind of explain a little bit of how that's distributed. So in 2020. Looks like we had probably our third highest in the past 5 years of gravel revenue. And you can kind of see the total tons or the total cubic yards that were pulled out. And those are two separate figures. Some companies report in tons and some companies report in cubic yards. And so you can kind of see the trend there. How that tax is distributed, it doesn't just go to the county, it also goes to the townships as well, for road maintenance and other things like that. So the county gets 42.5% of the gravel tax. Townships get 42.5%, and then 15% just goes into the reserve fund, the gravel reserve fund. Townships that have gravel pits in their townships, they would get a larger portion of the gravel tax than townships that don't have active pits in their township.
When was the last time that's been reviewed, that whole?
Gravel tax? Oh, Commissioner Gross and I were just
1985.
1985, right? Yes, yep. So that's when this formula was determined, and I think it was the county engineer and the auditor's office and commissioners all worked on that.
That's something, Commissioner Gross, didn't you want to
Yeah, I wanted to review that because at this point, you know, whether you have one gravel pit in your township or whether you have 10 gravel pits in your township, you get the same amount of money. You know, I don't know if that's fair to the townships that are having all that traffic in their township. You get the same amount of money as one, you know, so, I think there should be, something should be looked at there as far as how we distribute that, you know,
Yeah.
so.
And Mr. Chair, and Commissioner Gross, you could be a township that's adjacent to another one. You could have 0 pits in your township, but you're getting all the traffic.
That's
Well,
true too.
I think, Matt, it would be appropriate to bring that to highway tracking for some review. I think that's what you wanted to.
Yeah, when we have our meeting next week, I think,
Yeah.
bring that up.
Okay, very good. Yes, Commissioner Mojo.
I also think it's important to, maybe for topic at the planning, highway department, or highway tracking committee. You know, we've permitted a lot of gravel pits over the last few years, and there are 2 major projects that are going on the North Dakota side. One will start here a little later, but one has been going on for the last year. That requires a substantial amount of Clay County product. And, you know, I don't know if we should have the discussion or talk about the fact that these are Clay County resources that are being exhausted to go on into North Dakota projects. And so there is a significant amount of wear and tear that's happening on our county roads because of this. And I don't necessarily know if the permit to apply really goes that far in repairing what the wear and tear on those roads are. I know that there was an issue last year with special over-the-road permits for some of those overweight trucks that really didn't, there was a snafu with the state, whatever. You know, I know that overlays between your department and permitting and also Dave Overbaugh's department and repair. But I think we should really have the discussion and be aware of what those major haul routes are for those projects and how that will affect those roads going forward. I'm not necessarily advocating for increasing permit fees by any means, but I know that there are other counties in the state that have origination fees or delivery fees to help go into that pot of money. So if you know, a Clay County product is going into another state or another county, there's some pot of money that can go to help repair that.
Well, you know, you raise a good point. I think, you know, you look at in the metro area in Minnesota alone, you know, they allowed a lot of building to take place over some critical resources, which made those resources no longer available. And you know, so I think, you know, how we protect our resources in Clay County is extremely important, and I don't know how you're gonna be able to suggest where it goes, but certainly it's how the tax is done is an option that we have to look at. And so I appreciate your comments, and I think we should do that in highway tracking, and we might have to gather some input from our Clay County pits and our Clay County haulers as well.
Exactly, and I think as you look forward to what a 5-year plan on the highway department looks like, if you know, just for example, the diversion project, and if you've got roads that are just gonna get torn apart from haul routes, which will happen, are those routes on replacement plans? Thank you.
Very good.
And Mr. Chair and Commissioners, one thing I think that we could do a better job of as a department is just getting more definitive haul route information when we approve these permits, or when the Planning Commission approves these permits. And then just having that information even available to, say, our Highway Department. I think that's something we're working on improving.
Well, I think going a bit further than that is maybe having the highway department involved with what the haul route should be.
Yeah, and Mr. Chair, at this point, we do, for these pits, we do get the Highway Department input. And that's one of the things that they ask about is the haul routes, so.
Very good.
All right. So projects for 2021, the big project being the Clay County Comprehensive and Transportation Plan update. We had our first meeting, last month. And the study review committee is kind of the committee that's driving the comprehensive plan update. We're looking at getting a public input survey that's been developed by MetroCog out today, and they've also developed a web page that we can link to from our Clay County website, and we'll get that public input survey up and running out there. And the goal is to have that up today and then run through April 16th, I believe. And also looking to have a public input meeting. Right now it's looking like maybe the week of March 23rd or March 20th. That's a Tuesday. So March 23rd, I think, is what the date that we're kind of looking at for that public input meeting. Really excited to get going on this comprehensive plan update, and it'll be serve as a good guide for Clay County in the future. This is something that's, I believe, been going on since, I want to say 2017, the Buffalo River Flood Insurance Study. There is a stretch of the Buffalo River between just north of Highway 10, between the Buffalo River Speedway and roughly going north, just north of Glendon, where you see the floodplain just kind of go like this, and it stretches out for a long ways, and it's not very accurate. So we've been working on an update to that, and having some delays with that project, just getting it through FEMA approval, and I'm hopeful, crossing all my fingers and toes, that we will have some that'll be completed this spring. Good is my hope. So they asked for input on a draft public notice from me, so I'm assuming that that's a good sign that we're moving in the
We had some landowners who had told us in the past that they've never had floodwaters touch their property, but yet they were in this 100-year floodplain and required to have the insurance, right? Is
that is correct, Mr.
Are we
Chair.
seeing some potential, were they accurate in their?
Yes, yep, that is correct. And I believe too that the way that the current floodplain is, and this was updated in 2012, that if there was a 100-year flood event, Highway 10 would be underwater, according to
The current map.
yeah. Which is not the case. Yeah, yeah. So. Yeah, and then the final thing that we're working on is we're working on doing a more thorough auditing of gravel pits in the county, gravel pit inspections. There's been a lot of activity with gravel pits. We have quite a few. I think we have like probably 86 active pits right now, which is more than I would say most counties And that's just when you have a good gravel resource and you're close to a growing metropolitan area. That's the result of that. And so just setting up a kind of an inspection schedule and a way to track inspections, and been working with information services and Mark Sloan on developing a way to do that and track that. So. And just finally, just want to thank my staff, Rita Ruckert and Erica Frank, for helping me out gather up all this information and for all the good work that they do. So thanks to them. Any questions, final questions for me?
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
We will take a 3-minute break. We'll be back. All right, we are back in session, and we'll try to see if we can make up some time here, but our next is an annual update from Kimberly Savageau from our Recorder's Office.
Hi, good morning, Chair. Good morning, Commissioners. Yes, I'm here for my annual updates. I'm going to start with the mission statement of the Recorder's Office. The Recorder's Office mission is to promptly record, file, and preserve documents accurately in an efficient, responsible, and professional manner for posterity and legal purposes. Covering our different areas of responsibility, we do real estate recording, issue birth and death certificates, marriage licenses, marriage credentials, notary public registration, and state and federal tax liens. Some of our highlights from 2020 were that we had a major software upgrade in March that required much preparation and training from my staff. In dealing with the pandemic, we had some legislation changes to be able to issue marriage licenses without the person appearing in person. So we had to work through procedures and work with the customers in a much different way than we did pre-COVID. We also worked on a plat preservation project. So some sleeves that were storing our plats were starting to deteriorate, and so we went through all of those plats and made sure that they will be protected for years to come. Looking ahead, we have a couple different projects that were approved by the CARES funding. We are working on those, and they're going to put almost 100 years of our real estate records into our online searching system. And so I have many customers and staff that are very excited for the completion of that project.
And those contracts were signed, right?
Yes, yep. The other big thing happening will be our office relocation to the government center. This is going to double the number of service windows that we have for our customers, and it's going to allow more space for social distancing and privacy when they're coming in, working and conducting their business at our office, so I'm very excited for that. The other thing is that we'll have a contained space for our real estate researchers so that our records will be separate from our employee workstations. So one of the main areas of our office is the real estate recording, and as interest rates began dropping in 2020, we saw an increase in our real estate recording. Each mortgage that is refinanced can result in multiple recordings in our office, and as you can see on the chart, 2020 was a year like we had not seen in many years. On average, our office records between 10,000 to 11,000 documents per year, and in 2020, we recorded 13,667 documents. So October of 2020 was one of our busiest months for recording in several years. We recorded almost 1,500 documents. COVID did have a positive impact on our number of documents that were submitted electronically to our office. Previously, we had been stuck around the 40% average for submissions electronically. Now with COVID, we're averaging about 67% of them submitted to us. E-recording offers many benefits to our submitter. They know almost immediately when their document is accepted for recording. They also know, on the flip side, when we do not accept their document, and they would possibly have time to fix their submission and get it back to us the same day for recording. In 2020, we did record 11 plats, so I think that kind of goes along with our growth. Our biggest residential plat was in Barnesville, Del Ager Gilbertson's third edition that had 61 lots. We had a couple other plats in Barnesville, Dilworth, Moorhead, and Oakport. All of those recorded plats and our corner certificates are online to the public for free through our Clay County website. Our other online services are our access to our real estate. You can do a monthly subscription or a pay-as-you-go service called Tapestry. The other service that we offer through real estate for the constituents in the county is a property fraud alert. So if somebody would like to sign up to have their name monitored on documents that are recording, they can sign up through us and they would receive a notification either via phone call or email message if something is recorded with their name on it. The other area that our office deals with is vital records. We continue to issue certified copies of birth and death records and marriage certificates to assist people in obtaining their real ID. In the past couple of years, our amount of requests of these have increased due to the real ID requirements. We can issue certified birth records for anybody born in Minnesota. So you can be born in Duluth or St. Paul and we can issue that record right here in Clay County. We can also issue death records statewide for any death that occurred after 1997. We issue certified copies of marriage records for people who applied for their marriage license here in Clay County. And we also file marriage credentials for individuals who want to perform weddings in Minnesota. And this was another area that had an above average year in 2020 with wedding plans changing as various restrictions were put in place due to COVID. We filed many more credentials for people to have smaller weddings and have somebody else perform them.
Just a quick question. What is our fee for marriage records, or copies of marriage?
Like a copy of a marriage certificate is $9.
Okay, thank you.
In 2020, the number of marriage licenses that we did issue was down. We only issued 503 marriage licenses. It is down from previous years. In statute, it's a requirement that at least one party appear in person. And like I previously stated, in mid-April, we did work through legislation when we had restrictions to access the courthouse so that we could still continue to issue marriage licenses through that. Pre-COVID, the recorder's office, we did have the capability of accepting credit cards, and that was a really valuable tool to have as people were expecting to be able to continue to do their business. We were able to assist them over the phone. I would like to give a huge thank you to all of my staff. 2020 was quite the year even before COVID. We had our software upgraded that changed every single procedure in our office pretty much, and so we have worked through many, many changes, and with the day-to-day policy changes of COVID, they have really done a great job, so I'm very appreciative of everything that they've done. Do you guys have any questions for me or for the recorder's office?
Mr. Mojo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the fact that you identified that CARES Act funding was used to kind of streamline some of the issues that your department sees. And I think from the public's perspective, it's important to note, important for them to understand that those funds were used to reduce face-to-face contact, but also streamline your department going forward. People will have more access to more information on the web than they had otherwise. So I'm excited that we were able to use those funds to do that for your department.
Yes, we are very much appreciative. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Kimberly.
Thank you.
Next annual update is from our Human Resources Department, our Director Darren. Brook, good morning, Darren.
All right, well, thank you for having me today. I normally come with about 18 or 19 slides myself, but when I saw the way Mark Sloan did it, I thought that was a pretty good idea to put it all on one page. I hope he didn't copyright it, and now you can put mine next to his on your refrigerator. So my organization, as far as human resources goes, there's 4 of us. I have one half-time person. I've been here 10 years last month. Anna Moore, she is my HR coordinator, and she'll be here actually 1 year. I think it's this week. I also have Melissa Young, who works as an HR generalist, and she has been with the county for 13 and a half years about, but she's been with Human Resources for 9 years. And then Kathy Eiley, she is my .5 admin assistant up here. She works here. Both Anna and Melissa are working from home. And as you could imagine, last year was really a difficult process to get all of our processes online as much as possible. Some of the HR functions that we do, of course, is personnel management and employee relations. We do all the inputting for the payroll data. Mostly Anna and Melissa do that. Everything from steps to new hires to terminations, all of that goes through Anna and Melissa, but the Auditor Treasurer's Office actually runs the payroll. We don't have a payroll person that does that. Benefit management, all the benefits that happen within Clay County goes through Anna Moore. Workman's compensation claims and FMLA go through mostly Melissa. Labor negotiations, if you look on the top right there, we do have 9 unions, and that kind of gives you the status of where we are with each one of those unions. As you know, in the past, we've always tried to stagger our union negotiations throughout the year, so we would have maybe 3 or 4 one year and 3 or 4 the next year. But with the way that we are negotiating now, we only negotiated 2-year contracts for the ones that were here that ended last year. So as you can see, most of those will be ending in 2022. So 8 of the 9 will be ending in 2022. I also do the annual county payroll budget that I send to Steve Larson, usually around the April timeframe, and that basically looks at everybody's wages for the following year, applies steps and COLAs and all that other stuff, and then also, of course, the HR personnel budget process. The functions that we are responsible for is the Safety Committee, the Employee Appreciation Committee, which is kind of on hold right now, the Insurance Committee, which 2 of the commissioners sit on. We also are involved with the Wellness Committee and the Personnel Issues Committee, which isn't listed on your sheet there, but 2 commissioners sit on the Personnel Issues Committee as well. We do all the staffing and advertising for the county. We track and maintain all the employee evaluations, and I'm also dual-hatted as the Assistant County Administrator. So HR in itself is usually a busy office, but as you know, COVID and CARES Act last year just added to that, and sometimes we were kind of making it up as we went because there was no real way of figuring it out until it actually happened. So that took a lot of time last year and probably will continue into this year. As you know, this board approved to continue the COVID-19 and through March 30th of this year. And when I get to my stats, you can see how many leaves we've processed throughout the year. We currently have 608 employees. 439 of those are full-time, 150 are variable hour, 18 part-time, and 1 seasonal. This fluctuates almost daily. As a matter of fact, this morning I got notification that 2 variable hours had left employment. So that 608 is constantly moving. We have 252 men and 356 women. 295 of our employees are married, 313 are single, and most of our employees, but a large portion of them also live in North Dakota. 230 live in North Dakota, with 375 living in Minnesota. In 2020, we had 166 hires. A majority of those are variable hours. We filter through them fairly quickly, and we had 106 separations in 2020. As you know, and you can remember, last November, December, we did have a hiring freeze, so a lot of those hires, people that left last year, we hired this year when this, in 2020, when it started again. And then there's the status on the age of our workforce. As you can see, 151 employees alone are over the age of 46. The unions, I touched on that already. As far as the Clay County stats for 2020, we had 64 work comp cases that were recorded. That doesn't mean that all of them were paid out or anything, but we kind of report everything. Citizens' concerns forms. I'm really happy with how that works. Many years ago, I think Commissioner Mojo put that on our list of things to do. And so we have a link on our webpage that the citizens can submit questions, concerns, whatever. And that has really taken off. And what happens with that is this year, or last year, 2020, we had 113 of those submitted. And what happens is once they submit it, they can choose which department it goes to, and that then goes directly to that department head to address that concern. I also get all of them, so then I can have an opportunity to follow up if something hasn't been taken care of. But what I've found is the majority of these citizens' concerns are responded to within 24 hours. So it's really worked out a very good system to give feedback to the citizens. As I mentioned, COVID-19 was a big thing for us last year. Sick leave, we processed 235 COVID-19 sick leave requests. All of them were either quarantined or isolated. And so that's, as you can see, it's a third of our workforce was impacted by the virus. We processed 635 applications last year. We've got 464 benefit eligible employees with 407 single plans and 57 family plans. We also do all the badges for the county. And just that little chart down at the bottom kind of shows you the increase that we've had in employees over the last 4 or 5 years. Aside from that, we're looking at this year, some of our goals that we're moving towards is, of course, going to the new government center and moving there and getting settled into there. Are looking at a new HR payroll system. The system that we're using right now has been, not discontinued, but bought out. And so we went through a big process in 2020 to look for another HR payroll system. We're also in conjunction with the Auditor Treasurer's Office on that. And they did settle on a software system called Ultimate. And we're hoping that that'll really help us out with some things, especially open enrollment, because they have an online open enrollment system. And so if we can get this system in place by the end of next year, probably, hopefully by the fall, so we would have some time to work through it, then the 2021 open enrollment will hopefully be online. And going with that, there's a lot of things that we have moved online just for necessity's sake, because we do have Melissa and Anna working from home, so anything that has to do with in-processing, I think on the front there I have 28 forms that we have online now that people can fill out from their home. And so we're trying to take some of the things that we've taken advantage of during the COVID and learned the hard way, and trying to incorporate that to make it more efficient for the HR department as well. So I am open to any questions.
Questions? Okay, yeah, Commissioner Erminger.
Just one observation, Darren, since coming here, and there's 2 of us that are new employees now, and this isn't my first rodeo. I've worked in local government for 40 years, and you and your people, and I'll throw this out to the IS people as well. Just as coming in as a new employee, I have been really impressed with the quality of service, the response, and the amount of knowledge that I've seen from county employees, and those 2 departments in particular. They've had to deal with us, getting us up on the computers and in the system, and then getting us through the insurance and the employment paperwork and everything else. It's been done here as well as I've ever seen it, so.
Thank you.
I just want to acknowledge that and thank you and your people.
Thank you. Yeah, I am so happy with my employees. Anna has just been a spectacular addition. Melissa is just constantly working, And I just basically try to stay out of the way and let them do their thing. So they do a really good job for me, and Kathy's really come along in the last year, especially Kathy not having any HR experience. And she has just kind of stepped up and helped out with the daily administrative duties that take time but aren't overly difficult. But it's been a big help for us. So thank you for those comments.
Commissioner Mojo.
A couple years ago, when we revamped the grandfathered status and some of the insurance and then family policies, I see that we've got 57 on the family plan. Is our hope working? Are we seeing that increase?
Yeah, and we have increased our family plans in the past year. I think we've added, I briefed this a couple of weeks ago, but I think we added 14 or 15 new families to that.
Okay.
Family plans are still expensive. I mean, it's not very cheap.
Right.
But if you get the highest deductible family plan, the county contribution actually covers that.
Right.
So that's
So then, when I see our 106 separations and then 166 new hires, our savings that we had anticipated moving forward with the insurance, is that still on track for what you thought? Or are we higher or lower?
We are probably a little lower than what we wanted to be. I think a lot of that has to do with those 166 are variable hour. A lot of them are variable hour, which aren't eligible for the benefits and the county contribution. But I think going forward, we will be seeing more and more benefit of that.
Okay, thank you.
Excuse me.
Go ahead.
The new employees that you hire, are you seeing that they're taking out more of the options? Before, when you got that cafeteria plan, you got the same amount whether you took 5 things or 6, 7, 8 things.
Right.
But now, you only get whatever you take out, dude. More of them take now more of the options, and it's costing us more. Do we have to contribute more because they're taking out more options?
I don't think so. No, I'm not.
Well, I think the cafeteria plan, you get one amount if you're,
Right.
yeah, depending
You
on.
get one amount if you're grandfathered single plan.
Right?
You get one amount if you're new single plan, and all family plans get the same county contribution amount. So whatever they do with that money is totally up to them. We do require that they have at least single health, single dental, and basic life.
Okay, right, you get those 3, but I know there's disability insurance, there's
Long-term disability, short-term disability, all of that.
all kinds of, aren't they eligible for all of them?
Sure.
Do they take all of them? Because,
It's really.
they're not gonna get any more or less money if they don't take them. Why wouldn't they take them?
Well, you get less cash if you take them.
You get less cash back. So you wouldn't, you don't,
Well,
those
you're
are
gonna get
all-
so much money whether you take all the options or not. Okay.
Yeah, you only get a set amount, and then if they want to take out vision or short-term disability or something, that's going to be above and beyond our basic plans of single health, single dental, and basic life. So if they want to take out vision or short-term disability or supplemental life, that will cost them more money. I don't have the statistics of if people are choosing more of those or less of those based on the county contribution. The whole idea of changing it was that they would have less cash back.
Well, right, I realize that, but I was just wondering whether people were taking all the money available now. Taking all the plans out to get up to the money that's available.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
Everybody,
Do we have to, does the county contribute some? Like, if I take out vision, does the county have to contribute some money? It costs me so much money, but the county doesn't have to contribute more.
no, the county doesn't contribute any more than what they give you as a county contribution. So if they take out vision, we don't give you more money for vision, if that's where you're going.
It comes out of what we put in for the cafeteria plan.
Correct.
Just a clarification, you guys have said cash back a few times, but that's actually into a VIVA or an HSA or something, right? It's not like money on your paycheck.
The grandfathered people do get money back. This was the whole deal that we went through with the market study and the cash back. And so what we did was anybody that was grandfathered before January 1st of 2020, they would continue to get the county contribution. And if they didn't use all of that money, then they would get whatever was left as a taxable income. Then the new people that were hired after January 1st, 2020, they had to use their cash for either if they had health or dental or life, or if they wanted to buy short-term disability or vision or whatever, they would have to use that. So it was reducing the amount of cash back that anybody hired after January 1st, 2020 would be allowed to get. So that's why we have 3 different county contribution rates.
But just to follow up, there is a way in there of enticing to make sure we get more families on the plan, and
Yes.
that's part of that. And I think it probably would be helpful for you to send this quick stat sheet that they can have another one for their fridge, that just shows how it's different from the grandfathered employees versus.
Yep, and the way that we were trying to get more and more families on the plan was we didn't give them a lower, like the single plans, and we had so many single plans that the single plans got the lower county contribution. But for the family plans, we actually increased the county contribution $200 to entice more people to get onto family plans and make it more affordable for them. So that was the cross-off. Whether you're pre-2020 or post-2020, everybody that has a family plan gets what they were supposed to get, plus they were getting $200 extra to kind of entice people to take the family plan. And if you have a good balance between family and single, then that's what, stabilizes our increases sometimes, instead of seeing these huge waves of increases for our health insurance premiums.
Okay. Kind of running behind here. Anything else, Darren, that you have for us?
Nope, that was it.
Okay, any other questions? Thank you, Darren.
Okay, thank you.
I'm assuming Dave is ready.
Can you hear me?
Oh, he's online? Okay.
I think Justin's out here, I think.
Okay.
Can you bring the teams up, though?
All right, we're going to talk about the Broadway Bridge closure.
Can you hear me, Kevin?
Oh, Dave, you're on, okay. Yes.
Okay. I guess what I'd like to do is give a little update on kind of where we were at 3 years ago, the project that we did, and then I think our consultant is on the team's meeting as well, and then maybe I could hand it over to Jamison Beiswinger from SRF.
Can you hear me, Dave?
We can hear you, yes.
Yep, we can hear you, Jamison.
Thanks.
Okay, we've been working with the city of Fargo for the past 3 years on a slope stability project. It's a slope stability and monitoring project, where the goal of the project was to analyze the movement of the slopes and the impact it's having on the bridge, specifically the northernmost pier in the river. It's more so on the northern side or close to the Minnesota side, but essentially the bridge is a shared bridge between the city of Fargo and Clay County. A secondary goal of the project was to establish a baseline for the movement of the pier, and then that would lay out parameters for the level or frequency of the testing or inspection on the pier, basically measuring additional movement. So, and it also had a parameter for, if and when it moved too much, there would be a closure of the bridge itself. The past 18 months or 2 years, the bridge has been moving very, very gradual or minimal, and sometimes not at all. So we really didn't expect to see a more rapid movement like we did in the past several months. But we also haven't really had the high river levels. I think the bridge gets closed maybe once or twice or 3 times during the summertime with the heavy rains that we've had in the last couple of years. It also made it a little bit of a challenge to actually do the project itself because there was a subcontract with Braun Intertech to do some of this data collection during this past 18 months. And there was great periods of time where we couldn't even collect data due to the high river levels. A couple weeks ago, our highway department staff went out and took some survey levels on the pier itself, and then we handed this information over to our consultant, like I said, Jameson Beiswinger from SRF. And maybe I'll let Jameson just kind of grab this and go from there.
Yeah, Jameson, if you can give us kind of a high level, we're kind of running behind here this morning, but if you can give us kind of a high level, what you found, please.
Yeah, sure. So essentially, if you haven't seen the pictures in the paper or everything, that kind of tells the story of what's going on. The soils in the Red River are extremely weak and very susceptible to moving. As Dave mentioned, when we were monitoring it for about 18 months, we saw very little movement, and we think this is because actually the river was very high, which tends to have a stabilizing effect on the soils. When we did notice movement was when the river kind of came down. And I think this past summer/fall was maybe not quite as wet as our monitoring period. So we developed some criteria that said, we did a structural analysis, developed some criteria and to say, okay, you know, if there's this much tilt on this pier, we need to start monitoring it more frequently. And if if that tilt exceeds a certain value, then we recommend closing it. Well, the tilt on the pier is kind of within our monitor this more frequently threshold, but we're right on the edge of where our recommendations are for closure. So pretty much what we did is we convened a meeting with both DOTs, the county, and the city of Fargo, just to kind of go over it and talk about, what the consequences are here if things do move more rapidly than anticipated, and the decision was made to close it. So that being said, the plan now, I believe, is for Clay County to continue monitoring it, because obviously, it's closed, but we kind of need to determine, what's the direction moving forward. And we've been working with the DOTs, and the county has, talking about, maybe sources of funding to replace it, rehab it, or I think part of this closure period, it'll be interesting from both the city and the county's perspective, as I understand, to get input from the public on, is this closure a big deal, or are people finding other routes and living with it? And is cost to do something like a replacement warranted? I don't know if Dave, that's high enough level, or if anyone has questions regarding, what we found.
No, that's absolutely right. We are going to continue working, like you said, with both DOTs, City of Fargo, our bridge, our leaders and our mentors from the bridge departments on both sides of the river. We're going to, see what the best option is feasibility wise. Is it to keep the existing structure in place and try to rehab and keep the infrastructure that we've already paid for, or is it, too high of a cost where it's best to move forward? At this time, there's a lot of unknowns. I believe there's also a pretty large public input part that we'd like to gather too, as far as the traffic that's out there.
Dave, this is Kevin. And James, thank you for your report too. And Commissioner Gross and I were able to sit in on that conference, and one of the concerning discussions to me was, we were starting to get to be where they were recommending that thing have a daily review. Anytime you're having to start looking at a bridge on a daily basis, you have to question its stability. And one of the things that the experts did tell us was that when that bridge does decide to go, it's gonna go. It's not gonna be a thing over a period of time. It's more than likely gonna just all of a sudden give and go. And so that's where the recommendation was, that we wanted no traffic on that bridge, we wanted no pedestrian traffic on that bridge, and we want nobody underneath that bridge. And I think those are kind of where we're at on it, and I think they were barricading it accordingly. So, you know, in my life before county commissioner, I was on the township board up there, and that's where this goes, is right into the, well, it's now the city of Moorhead, but, and that bridge was, really important to the residents up there. It was important to the businesses on North Broadway. You know, I think they were, but in the end, I supported what these engineers were saying, and I do it from the standpoint of public safety, and that has to come first. Now, what happens to that bridge in the future, I think there needs to be certainly some research goes on as to, can it be repaired? How much would it cost to be repaired? Or replaced? How much is it gonna cost to, if we don't open it, to remove it? Because it still is a threat. It's a threat to the river, if it were to fall in. So there's a lot of things that are important that need to be working, and I'm glad that both DOTs from both states are involved with it, as well as the city and Clay County. And I know we've been keeping the city of Moorhead engineers apprised, you know, what's going on too. So, you know, I think I know it's a frustration point for some residents who have become accustomed to that, but it's something we needed to do. Commissioner Gross.
When we transferred that property over, you said it's in the city of Moorhead now, that bridge, right?
Well, it's always been a Clay County bridge.
Right.
But it's.
That's when it was Clay County up there.
Yeah, well, it's still Clay
It's
County.
still Clay County.
But it just happens that the local jurisdiction has changed.
Okay.
From Oakport to the city.
So when we transferred that property in there, was there something in that statement that the bridge didn't go along with it, or that the bridge stays Clay County property?
Yeah, I guess that would be,
I was just
The
wondering
roadway,
more.
it's
roadway
just like
itself
all of our,
doesn't change.
it's just like our county road, our Wall Street Road, that's a county road. It stayed county, even though.
I realized that, yes.
Even though, so, and the bridge would act the same way.
Dave, you had something, excuse me.
Kevin kind of summed it up. You know, when the annexation changed from township to the city of Moorhead, the roadways and the infrastructures and the right-of-ways, they do not change with the annexation.
Okay,
I mean, they didn't in this case anyway.
thank you.
All right, so I think we kind of wanted an update on that. I was hoping that we could have maybe seen, or had the board be able to see a couple of those pictures, and I think it would, do you have those, Dustin?
I can try sharing my screen if.
Can you do that, just especially the one where the guys are on the ladder there, and then maybe the one pictures where you showed, not only is it above ground, but also you've been able to show the tilt of the pier underground. That's equally important.
Yeah, let me try to show this. My screen isn't seeing I don't know what you're seeing, if you're seeing my email, my face, or a picture.
Email.
Now we're
Email?
seeing
Okay.
an email screen now is what we're,
All right.
there we go.
All right, there you go. So yeah, this is from when the guys, the Clay County staff went out and surveyed it. And you know, I just want to give my compliments to these guys, because I'll just be honest, it took a couple of iterations with our surveyors for them to understand exactly what they were doing, and these guys got it almost dead on the first time. So
Can you zoom that
was-
in a little bit?
Yep.
Jameson, can I make a quick comment, and can you correct me if I'm wrong, but when the bridge started moving in 1990, was the top actually tilting forward? And that's
Yep.
why we built that piece, that
on the left
extension
side
on the
there.
top of the pier, because the pier itself was actually tipping from the top forward. And at that time, they extended the pier so that the beams wouldn't fall off, and they also tied it with bars that did hold, but now there's so much pressure, it's reversed itself and the bottom is sliding out.
Yeah, I kind of got a I don't know if it's a storyboard kind of picture of you know what we found, but yeah, here we go. So yeah, this is kind of a story of this pier. So at first, what was happening is the ground flow, essentially the ground is moving, and it fails along this shear plane, and it pushes on the pier, and it was tilting forward at the top. So yeah, they built a bracket on, I think it was around 2000. They built a bracket because the beams were kind of shifting off the pier, and then they tied it back to the abutment to try to kind of hold it in place. Well, that worked to keep the top from kind of kicking out like that. But then what kind of happened is it starts pushing on the pier like this, and it pushes so much that this kind of starts to maybe move backwards instead. And we kind of noticed that the geometry of this thing is a little funky with the river, but we kind of noticed that those rods that were in tension are now, some of them are tight and some of them are kind of loose now. So that's kind of the history of that. There's some movement on the abutments, the part where the bridge kind of touches the ground, but that the way the piling works for those is it's more resistant to those loads. So those are, while they've moved, they're not as in critical as condition as this piece right here.
I think an explanation that was given earlier too about the reason we didn't see movement was because the river was high for a year. Being involved with flood control projects for a long time, you also know that when the river is down is when you can get your most bank stabilization issues, where you get caving in. As you've probably seen within the projects within the city and then the Oakport project, we had to make sure that we stayed back plenty distance from that weakened part, so things won't fall into the river. So it makes perfectly sense that when that river starts to go down, that we can see these fluctuations on that bridge, and it's unfortunate, but it is what it is.
Yeah, when we were monitoring it, while we didn't see a lot of movement, and sometimes we couldn't actually monitor the bridge itself, we did have soil instrumentation that could monitor the soil movement, so we could collect readings on that. And there were months and months where nothing moved, and then it would move just a little bit. Not a lot, because it was still pretty wet, but what we found was we kind of correlated those movement periods to when the river was actually lower. So.
All right, well, I think the whole point of this was to make sure the board got an update on the closure, and also for the public to hear about it and maybe to see these pictures again. It's kind of concerning that with what we had to do. So thank you for being here and sharing your expertise with us.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Justin. Thanks, Dave. All right, we'll move on now to the introduction to our countywide improvement plan. We got the birthday boy Joe here.
Oh, no.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. I have some bigger copies.
Yeah, that would be good. Yeah.
Printed a little small for me.
All right, thank you.
And again, this is meant just to kind of give you guys a high-level deal of what we're talking about right now. There's still a lot of work to be done, but allows you to kind of review and see if you think we're missing something that we need to incorporate into this as well, so.
Okay. All right, good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. What you have here, like was said, this is just kind of the introduction of the capital plan for this year. Just a short history, I think about 11 years ago, we took out a bond to replace all the roofs, the windows in the service center, kind of put together a list like this. And then just after that, we created this format here to systematically every year kind of track projects and do them in phases. And so basically what we have, priority 1, 1 to 3, priority 2, 3 to 5, and priority 3, 5 to 10. So this is kind of the nothing new to the capital improvement committee. This is something we look at annually every year, but the only thing that has changed, I guess, is we've added, with an idea, we felt we needed to have an overall look of the county as a whole, as opposed to in the past, it's been just kind of on campus type needs. So I've met with department heads, met with Dave over about the highway to have some conversations about their facilities. And so this is everything wrapped up into one project here, or into one list. I guess for me, what I'm asking today is, obviously we have some numbers here, we have some high costs, and what I'd like to do is go out and hire an engineer to take a look. There's roughly 8 projects within this list. The rest of them I would do, but there's 8 of them that need an in-depth engineer look at to get actual true cost of this before I would come back, and that's what I'd be asking today. But didn't want to go through every line item, but if you had questions, I'm open to that.
So part of what our discussions have been in the capital improvement committee was to kind of take a look at what our needs go out to and focus on anywhere from right now, the year 2021, all the way through 2026. And, as we've talked about, the bond rates right now are very attractive. And the combination of the low bond and the fact that we can, by doing some of these projects earlier, we're going to save on inflationary costs, so the net result would be very beneficial to us, as opposed to just putting money into these things on an annual basis through our normal budget process. We'd be much better off making the bond payment and saving the county taxpayers some significant dollars. So again, this is very preliminary. I support your request on the 12,500 or whatever.
Yep, it's 12,700.
I think it's critical that we get that feedback. But at the same point in time, in our capital improvement committee, we've also, these are things that Joe has brought up, and we brought up a few things, but as commissioners, if you see something that you think might be of significance that should be added to it, we'd probably like to know that before we get too far down the road. So Commissioner Mojo.
Thank you. I appreciate this. I think it's very well thought out. A lot of thought has gone into it. The major issue I have with it is the item in this lavender purple is detox plan.
Yeah.
And that has been something that there is a need. We all know it. I don't know what the plan is. I don't know. I think before 2035, we're definitely going to have a substantial plan for that. And so I think that, I know you're having those conversations. I know we have a committee to discuss what is the plan for detox. And so I think that's probably the most concerning piece on mine, and I'm sure that probably would be studied with this consultant.
Sure, yeah, the Commissioner Mojo, the lavender items too, we've put on there as, just for an example, you see detox plan, and then you move over to priority 2, there's an elevator upgrade there, that's about 80,000. So those are, we take those two in consideration. If for some reason detox wouldn't be in the family service center, then an idea would be to not even have that elevator, and then that cost goes away. So these, it's kind of a strategic plan by putting those on that are kind of up in the air still, but.
Right, and I
good
think
point.
that it is such a vital piece, and it's been such a headache for so many years. If we're gonna have the discussion on what's next for detox, it certainly should happen right now. And so, I don't know if that needs its own little category or what, but.
Yeah. Yes,
And I'm not on the committee, so I'm not saying that we need to figure it out now, but I certainly hope you'll have those discussions.
I think regardless of what we do with the detox, certainly through 2026, I think it'd take significant time to do a planning, and then whatever new we would do would take some time. It's just a matter of whether or not we want to invest in that elevator right now. But that's the Commissioner Gross.
Yeah, on the highway department part of it, weren't there some tents supposed to be in there? Or
Yeah,
is he doing that on his own, or is that?
Those are under priority 2 tents there.
It's in red.
Yeah, it's in red
Oh,
there.
okay. Oh, I
And,
thought they needed to be done right away.
Yeah, well, they're in pretty rough shape, and that's one of those where Dave and I and MnDOT would sit down and try to figure out, and the city of Moorhead would try to figure out, make sure everybody has the funding for that. So our next step with that one would be to see who has the funding and when can be done. I know 2024 has been a real, like, that's our absolute last year we want to put this off till, so, but I think our idea is to get that.
You know, and there's,
more.
oh, I'm sorry.
No.
Were you done, Commissioner Gross? Another thing too, that we probably have to have some discussions about that's not in here, and that goes to dispatch. You know, right now, we're in a joint dispatch area, and they're looking at a different site for that and what that's gonna be, and Clay County is gonna have a cost share involved with whatever's done there, and we might have to be incorporating something from a capital standpoint into that, as opposed to taking it out of I mean, there's obviously an annual budget cost to it, but to pay for a long-term facility in a short-term process probably isn't good. So we probably are gonna be looking at something down the road there, and I know Commissioner Ebinger and I will be working with our sheriff and others on that, but, so that's not in here at all. So,
Yeah.
but, Commissioner Ebinger?
It seemed like yesterday we were building a law enforcement center when I was chief over in Moorhead, and now I see a $500,000 need. Is that for the site?
No, I think we have some potential storage needs for, would be the maintenance and sheriffs and everything up at the DMV there, so I think there's some other things happening there that we're trying to work out.
Yeah, maybe to address that a little bit, we're currently looking at, and I think you've heard us talking, not at a high level deal on a potential land swap with the city. If that were to happen, then we would have to find some new space for our current needs, and so that's what that number is, but that number doesn't include what we would be getting in return. So that number would be maybe 300 instead of...
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but again, those are kind of at the point we're still in a negotiation stage with the city, and I think I'd ask Steve to maybe to have a presentation ready for this full board for maybe our next meeting, so you're well aware of what we're looking at before we get too far down the road, but Joe did put some dollars in there, but it's...
Yeah, and that's,
That's subject to if we replay,
if something happens there. Like you say, there's costs in here, but the next, we hire the engineer. Goal is maybe in the timeline here is sometime from now until first part of April, we'd come in with a dialed-in better plan, and some of these things would be figured out as well, that we could come with true costs of this project and what we want to do. So that would be my goal, is hiring this engineer, is to come back in April with you guys, go through the building committee during that time and just vet out everything and do it that way. The other thing is that the money spent on that engineer, if we go ahead and start executing some of these projects, that's some time that would have been put in anyway, so it isn't just money for a study, it's kind of a head start on each project of those 8 projects that we talked about, so. The other thing to bring up, I was gonna bring up is, we have a potential project that we may be coming next Tuesday for, and it's on here, it's called the courts, well, we call it the Fit Up Project, but it's basically, I'm putting together a project when we move out in mid-March or 1st of March, somewhere in there. We move the county out, there's gonna be some needs that we are working on, possibly bringing over potential renter for the court administration area, but some of those costs we talked about that are in here maybe needing to be done before, if we did a potential bond or anything, so I just wanted to bring that up.
We can get a little bit more in depth with that next week.
Yes, on Tuesday.
You and Steve and Brian to talk about what this plan looks like here.
Yep.
All right, well, we have a request from Joe to hire Who do you want to hire?
Oberdino, they're called Oberdino. Engineering is who I'd like to go with right now. And then once we get into a bigger, larger scale, I would put out a request for qualification. But for this study alone, I'd like to go with them. They did the boiler project with me and did very well, and I trust them at this point, so.
Make a motion to approve.
I'll second the motion.
We have a motion by Commissioner Gross, seconded by Commissioner Mojo. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. All right, Joe, you're good to go.
Did you want me to address the warranty issue over at the?
Yes, why don't
Before we
you,
forget.
yeah.
Yeah, so
Fixtures.
from what, you know, that was a lot of meetings we had on that. Basically, what it comes down to is you have two different check valves that got replaced, just to be very clear that we didn't have an issue where all the piping was getting deteriorated. We had two check valves that were, you know, large check valves, of course, but, the rest of the piping going throughout the building is copper. We don't have an issue with that, but we had a problem, or we tried to figure out exactly what was causing the corrosion of this to make sure it wasn't like an overall building problem. And it comes to find out that the way the jail heats their water for the laundry purposes was causing a chemical reaction. And that was the problem that it took so long for all us to figure out. We had a couple different chemists involved in this, and we came to a conclusion that a Culligan type hot water softener is needed to treat this. So, so that heating to a certain temperature is what we do different there versus around the campus. So I did express my concerns of we haven't seen this around, and that was the reason for that, is that temperature gets so hot. And anyways, so that's kind of the thing there. The two check valves were sent in to the manufacturer, and they came back saying that they were not warranty. And so we did attempt to try to get some money back on that end, but there was quite a bit of investigation and some stuff that, you know, the vendors did give us as part of a warranty type thing. But we should have it's not an overall problem. We believe it's fixed. So just wanted to make that clear.
All right. Thank you. Once again, happy birthday.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, committee reports. Commissioner Kaylee, can we start with you this morning?
I need a mic on. Wednesday, February 10th, I attended the Moorhead Business Association meeting. There was a presentation from Red River Valley, Access of Red River Valley. And they talked about how services to individuals with disabilities in our county have changed and what has kind of stayed the same during this period of time when we're dealing with COVID. The Moorhead Business Association also reported that they were trying to assist businesses to get their paperwork turned in for those business relief funds. And I was pleased to hear that all of that paperwork was turned in. Thursday, February 4th, there was an early childhood initiative meeting to work on our Kids Fest event. We're still looking for a venue for that, and the event will spotlight children's mental health. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Commissioner Gross.
Okay, on Wednesday, had a meeting on the North Bridge Highway track, what are you gonna call it? We've already discussed that enough that we know what that was all about. And also I attended the Wild Rice Watershed meeting. There, a lot of discussion on where they cleaned out ditches and they put it on property, and the guy didn't want it on his property. So they're having a lot of discussion how they're gonna collect all those spoils again and get them out of his land. The other thing was the one watershed, one plan. They did approve that, but they did have some question, you know, why would we want to approve this plan and stuff like that? And Kevin Root pretty much explained to them there's going to be a lot more money available to them for different projects. So they voted to approve it. Other than that, they plan on going to in-person meetings starting in March. Thursday, I went to the Beyond the Yellow Ribbon in the VFW in the in Dilworth, excuse me. Pretty much a report from each department, from the National Guard, different areas, and it was pretty much routine stuff there. There was nothing major that came up as far as discussions. Also, I had a land committee meeting on there with the city of Moorhead. We talked about this land swap with the motor vehicle department and our Clay County solid waste facility that we plan on building. So I think we came to an agreement there, and it looked real good, real promising that that's gonna go through, and hopefully that project works out good. Those were my meetings.
Thank you, Commissioner Mojo.
Thank you. Last week, I attended the Extension Committee interviews in regards to 2 open regional directors. As you know, the Clay County has a regional site, and they're currently working on replacing that director, so we're working on that. I also attended the Wild Rice Watershed District meeting with Commissioner Gross, who reported that well. I attended the SWCD meeting, good reports from all of the different areas in which they're working on, had discussions and how they will do lobbying at the state level with everything being virtual. More to come on that. And then Friday, I will be presenting for the AMC New Commissioner School. So I had a meeting with AMC representatives about collaboration for that presentation on Wednesday. And it didn't hit me until I saw the upcoming meetings that will then might presents a quorum, since we'll have 2 new commissioners. And so I'm not sure how, what we need to do to advertise that.
Yeah, we'll have to look into that. I hadn't even thought about that.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that until, so it's tomorrow for an hour. That's maybe after, I know the link is public, but anyways, I'm not sure if it's covered because of the AMC Virtual Legislative Conference is basically with that as well, but we can talk afterwards. Thank you. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Oh,
Binger.
no, it doesn't, sorry. I am on the Lakes and Prairies Community Action Committee, and due to the election of Shelley Carlson as mayor of Moorhead, there is an opening for that board needs to be represented by 3 different types of community, and elected government is one of them. And there's an opening, and I've encouraged Commissioner Kaylee to apply for that, and would be wondering if this board would be willing to make a motion to approve her as having that as part of her committee assignments.
Was that a motion?
Yes.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Mojo, second by Commissioner Ebinger to have Commissioner Kaylee be on the Lakes and Prairies Board, subject to their
Board approval.
Their board approval. Any further discussion on the motion? You're willing to do that?
I would love to be on that one, yes.
Okay. All right, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, the same. Motion carried. All right, very good. Are you
Done.
done? Okay, thank you. Commissioner Ebinger.
Wednesday, I virtually attended the Diversion Authority's Financial Committee meeting. It was pretty much routine business, with the exception of a couple of contracts that were presented for the Financial Committee to approve or to recommend to the board. And they were PR for Good and 1892, which are part of the public outreach. There has been some change in staffing public outreach. It preceded my term here, but they're trying to fill some gaps. And when it was brought forward, no one made the motion to carry it. And there was discussion about concerns that these are people out of the region, and that we needed people to have these positions filled within the region. One vendor was in Minneapolis, another was in Iceland.
What? Can I just comment on that? I appreciate your bringing this up. As someone who represents an area of the county that was significantly looked over and had major concerns about the amount of information that was being brought forward to them at the beginning. Those concerns have really been addressed. And the reason they were able to be addressed is because there were local people that were willing to meet them at their farm, that were willing to see exactly what was going to happen. And so I appreciate that there was concern, because if there is anything that's going to happen in terms of the people that are going to have those conversations, they have to be local. They absolutely have to be local. And to hear that there's someone from not even a county away, but a metro that's 4 hours away, or someone that's abroad, it's just asinine to me that we would do that. So I hope that we will continue to make sure that there's local voices that are able to hear the concerns of the residents.
That was strongly expressed during the finance meeting. The following day, we had the board meeting, and the status on that at this point is that it's going to be sent back to the public outreach people to release an RFP. The responses to that RFP will be brought back to the Finance Committee with their recommendations from staff, and they'll be reviewed, but it is geared towards getting local. And by that, since so much of this work is done in North Dakota, they want a North Dakota firm that can go to the legislature over there and have some connection. So that was addressed in pretty clear terms. The only other thing that involved both the Finance Committee and the board, John Shockley, the council, did present a change to go back to the original, well, actually, it's an enhanced version. Initially, the executive director could approve contracts of $150,000 and below, and then just bring it to the board's attention through the Finance Committee. That was cut back to, I believe, $10,000 when litigation began and these contracts weren't a consideration. John Shockley presented a recommendation that go to $200,000. It was approved by the Finance Committee and sent forward to the board, and it was approved as well. Again, those contracts can be made and approved for $200,000 and less, but they're still reported to the Finance Committee and to the board as a whole, so they're aware of what the expenditures are. The only other thing, we did have a presentation by Grand Farms at the board meeting. It's a firm that leases property and farms it, and they wanted a 1-year lease on a tract that, after extensive discussion, it was determined that it actually wasn't under the Diversion Authority's control at that time to approve it, and they were referred to the other entities that could. And that completes one other issue. I have been, pursuant to a discussion that the chairman brought forward here a couple weeks ago, I've been in touch with Carly Stark with AMC. She runs the Public Safety Policy Committee. And I brought to her attention here about a week or so ago that we need to have a discussion about our, as is a national issue, our correction facility and our juvenile facility. When people are incarcerated, they lose their medical assistance, and those costs, to a great extent, end up being paid by the local county. In some cases, cities are responsible for them when the person's in city custody in places where they have city jails. She indicated that is a federal issue, and it's on their radar, and although we won't discuss it this week in the meeting, that we can get it on the agenda and try and get some discussion started on it. So I'll be following up on that. That ends my report.
Thank you, and I just to follow up on that, I think that would be really good, because if nothing, I know it's a federal issue and it was brought to our attention as such, but it still doesn't mean that AMC shouldn't be going to NACO to work on this. I would think that every county within the country would share our concern about the potential liability for those, whichever states have medical assistance anyway. It certainly is a significant issue. Okay, my report on Tuesday, last Tuesday at a Lakes Country Service Cooperative meeting. We went over a new budget, or a new audit format, how it's going to be presented, and that was pretty well. There was some discussion about, and I brought that up this morning during our COVID update, where they were, had some discussions about the different school districts and how they are moving along with the vaccine implementation and what they might use as a priority schedule. And what was brought up, sometimes that second shot might influence differently than the first shot, where some people have tendency to maybe have a 24-hour bug or something afterwards, and so they kind of want to stagger how they get that second shot, so they might not have a lot of people out at the same point in time if they have to spend 24 hours at home. So I think they're doing a really good job in planning that, and I'm sure that Moorhead School District is doing the same, and all of our districts in Clay County. Then on Wednesday, I had the highway tracking meeting regarding the Broadway Bridge. That's been well talked about today. I don't need to go over that anymore. Thursday, we had the building committee meeting, which Commissioner Gross talked about. And we'll probably come to you with more information on what he referred to as the DMV potential thing there. There's some really good opportunities for both the city and the county there that we've been negotiating with them on as potential. The diversion meeting was that afternoon, as Commissioner Ebinger reported, and I certainly agree on the issue regarding local outreach, and both Commissioner Ebinger and I serve on that outreach committee, and we will be voicing our concern about the need to have local. That's critical, and so we will continue that process. That concludes my report. There was something else, but I'll think of it. Steve, do you want to?
I got just one other comment. On the Beyond the Yellow Ribbon meeting I was at, I forgot to mention that Kurt Cannon gave his report, and it's amazing when you're not involved with these different departments. I wasn't involved with the Veterans Organization before, and I'm on the committee now, and it's amazing what Kurt does for all our veterans in the county, and he is very involved and gave a good report and all the activities he does with the veterans. It was good to hear that. And one other question I had, I don't know, about a month ago, I asked something about broadband. Do we have a broadband policy, not a policy, problem in Clay County, or is there anybody that's looked into that, or?
Well, certainly after our Minnesota Rural Counties meeting last week, 2 weeks ago, and I had discussed having that survey added. Steve is working on having that presentation to the board. We're in the process of data collection right now. There has been areas determined in Clay County that are definitely a problem. And so I think our first step is data collection, and then would be having those conversations at a statewide level. So there are plans in place to have discussions with this board.
Okay, I was just wondering, because I was going to do that. I mean, if we do have a problem, I didn't know whether, but that would take care of it too, so.
Are we going to have something next week on that?
Yeah, I reached out to Mr. Zacharias about having the presentation. He said he would be willing to do it for our board, so.
Okay. Right. Okay, all right. Steve?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Last Tuesday, I had a meeting with Darren on a series of different issues here at the county. That afternoon, I met with Dan Molly on some shared things between the county and the city. Participated in the highway tracking meeting that's been addressed already. On the 10th, we also met with county management. We heard an update from Kathy on COVID and also the vaccinations. Had some discussion on the new government center, some of the procedural things as far as mail rooms and mail and how that will work as we move forward to different locations. That afternoon, I participated in the Red River Regional Dispatch Center there's just a couple things of note. I think as Commissioner Campbell noted earlier in the meeting, Chief Empting has served as the chair for the last year. He will continue in that role for 2021. Of note, I think that's important for our board is the Red River Board Authority did approve working with a realtor. There's been some, certainly a spatial and staffing needs study that was completed, I think, last year, where it indicated that there were some space needs. From the Minnesota perspective, we just asked for some adequate time for planning on that. And so I think there was a little bit of concern that I noted with the sheriff that that realtor had been approved because we haven't had any additional planning discussions there. They did, part of their spatial needs requirement or staffing piece said that if they were to get to the point where they had 40 dispatchers, that would be a full staff, that would then trigger the need for the additional 3 dispatchers. And the board did act on that, assuming that in July, that the staffing levels will remain at 40, that they would hire an additional 3 employees, and they would be utilizing their reserves and their reserves or revenues over expenditures from last year's budget to cover that, but it would again then be carried over permanently for 2022. The one challenge would be from a council perspective, they're limited on the number of councils that they currently have, and that's one of their needs, and so that's something that Mary Philippi, the executive director, is going to look at. Just in conjunction with some additional information we were hoping to have redistricting information from the U.S. Census as early as the end of March. They came out on Friday and indicated that they will not have that information now until September. And so that's important for this discussion in that we were going to be looking at from a breakdown currently North Dakota pays for 72% of the cost of operating the regional dispatch center. And with the increase that we've seen with the growth of West Fargo, we're anticipating that number will show in the census that number from Minnesota will likely go down. Unfortunately, it looks like we're not going to be able to get that information until this fall. So I just wanted to touch base on those. There's some impacts, and Commissioner Campbell mentioned, as far as master planning, there's some longer term issues that may come for us. On the 11th, participated in the building committee that's been addressed already. We did RFQs for our CM at risk for the resource recovery facility closed on Friday. We did have a very good amount of people that applied for that. Kirk and his staff will be reviewing those RFQs and be bringing those forward, recommendations for interviews next week at this board meeting. We kind of got a little bit of a surprise last Friday from the governor with Executive Order 20-07. There was no indication that was coming from any of the meetings that we had, and the governor basically indicated that as hospitalizations and the positivity rates decrease, they made some minor adjustments, didn't shift the dial, but made some minor adjustments as far as the capping, increasing the cap on how many people can be in different restaurants, up to 250 now as a number. They also extended closing until 11 p.m. Entertainment venues can now have a maximum of 1,250 people, and they can stay open until 11 o'clock. They also had private weddings, funerals, celebrations, and parties. We'll have a capacity limits of 25%, but up to 50 people can do that as long as social distancing can happen. And also gyms and fitness centers and pools are expanded to 250 people at that 25% capacity. Again, we didn't really know that was coming, but I guess a minor step, but a positive step. Some other good news. Commissioner Eberger noted we received information here over the weekend that MMB's January revenues increased by 14.17%, and so that certainly should be have a positive impact when we look at the additional funds that we were notified in in December of congressional relief funds. So in that conjunction, we're hoping that that February MMB full forecast will continue to be positive. Also, FEMA is now covering 100% of emergency pandemic costs going back to January of 2020, and that goes through September of this year. The federal government essentially did away with our 25% match, and so as you recall, we did as many as well, like many other cities and counties did in the state, utilized some of our CARES dollars to offset our 25% match. So right now, the state FEMA director is looking in if any of those dollars can be shifted back to the county for other CARES issues. Another positive thing, January, our half-cent sales tax was $26,000 more than 2021. So we're continuing to see positive areas there. Touch base on the speed test we've talked about. Just wanted to provide a timeline for the wild rice managers. We have two positions that are up for reappointment. In the first week of March, we're going to be asking for letters of interest, and that will be in all of the Minnesota papers in the Fargo Forum. The deadline for that will be March 16th. We'll be doing interviews before this board on March 23rd. Again, with the goal of the appointments are ending April, current appointments are ending April 25th, and so we would need to make an appointment that day. Again, just a reminder, our AMC virtual legislative conference is this Thursday. If you guys should have received links already through your registration. If you have any questions, let me know. You also either should have been reached out directly to from your AMC policy analyst for your policy meetings, or I saw this morning or yesterday that Julie Ring sent out links for those meetings. So with that, I conclude my report.
Thank you, Steve. I did want to just piggyback on something that Commissioner Ebringer talked about within the diversion authority with the allowing our administrator to go up to $200,000. The reason that had been dropped back to $10,000 prior to that was the fact that there was still so much of the project was in limbo because of the lawsuits, and so we didn't want him at that point in time authorizing large issues that maybe could have been in jeopardy based on the lawsuits. But now that's done, there's a lot of things that are going full speed ahead. It was important to change that so we didn't have to have these constant meetings. I think they're talking about potentially now for the next few months having 2 diversion authority meetings a month as opposed to 1 because of all of the activity that's coming up. So
same with Finance Committee.
yeah.
There's just so many contracts and so much activity.
All right. Brian, do you have anything for us? Colleen, anything? All right. All right, we are adjourned.